What's going on, family? How is everybody doing? What's going on? We have a quick show today. So don't think because it's 10 o'clock that you're going to be here all day. Oh, Yvette got me here all day. I'm going to be here all evening because no. Because let's not forget, while we're handling business, that we have 3 shows this week. So we're gonna truncate. We're gonna make one of these shows a little bit smaller, so today's gonna be a shorter show because I just want to hit on some things, and I want you to call in and discuss some things with me. Please. I don't say this often, but be concise. But before we do that, we got business to handle really quick. If we gonna make it a short show, please hit the like button. Please hit the share. I would appreciate it. It costs you no money to hit that like button and still be of service. So all service doesn't require any kind of contribution. If you can't do that, hit the like, hit the bell if you haven't hit the bell so that you actually get notifications. You can go subscribe to brown.com, subscribe to brown.com. You can do that as well. So please do that. If you want to donate, as always, you can go to donatebrown.com, patreon.com/Carnell. You can do that. The newsletter also will be in the description. So totally up to you, fam. But please do that. And please show up having read the book. 24th, that's Thursday. Please show up. So we have 3 this week. So this one's going to be a little bit short. But we got something to talk about. And I want to have a conversation about it because I keep hearing... something. I keep hearing, and I thought we would be done with this by now. But somebody sent me a thread today, and a lot of people were in it, and they were just going on. It was black people. I don't know where the black people were from, but they kept being like, well, all these black people out here wanting a check. I don't know what's wrong with these people wanting a check. A check's not gonna fix anything. Now understand that, like, nobody ever, I don't like comparing ourselves all the time with other groups, right? I don't like doing that. But the truth of the matter is, I don't think anybody would be so dismissive of the Jewish community when they, or have been when they bring Holocaust claims and say they're standing in the shoes, even if they aren't the victims of the Holocaust, they're standing in the shoes, right? So nobody says, oh, you don't need no check. Why you want to check? I don't know why people checks ain't gonna fix nothing. Nobody ever says that, and there's a reason for that, right? So what I want to get into, I want to get into not only what reparations is, but what reparations is not, because there's a distinction that we really haven't made. Because what you hear a lot of people on the left talking about, right? A lot of Democratic candidates talking about is equality, and we've discussed this before. But we have to really delve into reparations. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time, like I said, short show. But we have to delve into what reparations is not. We can't just talk about what reparations is. We have to, when we say it's just not a check, yeah, we have to go further in explaining it. But we have to talk about what it's not too. But before we talk about any of that, one thing that we really have to kind of understand and really get our head wrapped around is that we're not talking about a check. We're talking about wealth. We're talking about wealth that was plundered and stolen from our communities. And you see this up on the screen. It says median wealth of black Americans will fall to 0 by 2053. See, this wouldn't be such an urgent conversation even. We would still need our due, regardless. But the situation would not be as urgent if we weren't falling over a cliff. So what I don't understand, the people who say, I'm not going to be sorry about a check, the people talking about a check, all these Negroes talking about a check. It's not a check in the sense of just some kind of lottery win. It's wealth that was stolen and needs to be redistributed back to us. Right? But the other side of it is this. We are living in a specific period of urgency. When you talk about urgency, we're in an urgent moment right now. We're in a moment right now where we're about to go over a cliff. And I don't know how a poor group says a check doesn't fix anything. Now, one check, but a lot of checks. Right? Because you have to pour money into that group until the racial wealth gap is filled, until there is no racial wealth gap. When there's no racial wealth gap, you know that you've done enough. As long as it exists, you know there are systemic impediments to one group not only being upwardly mobile, but is being attached to the bottom. It's like we all, not only are we not upwardly mobile, like we have an albatross around our neck that is tied directly to slavery and the crude disadvantage. And it's like a magnet that's keeping us, because that's what happens when you have a whole group in this position. So when you look at this chart, when we talk about positionality, we've seen this chart before, but let's look. The red line is black. I mean, I'm sorry. The red line is the red line is black. Yeah, the red line is black people. And that blue line is Latino. Now, understand that we have been in this country longer than most, right? In terms of, like, a lot of Latinos are immigrants to this country. This used to be a mostly black-white country. I'm not saying that we're not at some point Chinese immigrants, but what I'm talking about, Native Americans, black-white, for the most part, for a very long time. So what does that mean, Yvette? It means that when you look at all of the data, what you're seeing is that other groups who are immigrating to this country are doing better than ADOS. Now, that's not, if this was just a one-off, like some people were doing better and we were really kind of further up ahead in this chart. Like, so if you look at this chart, right, let me bring it down a little bit. And this is according to Wolf, who takes out depreciating assets. Understand that's not even, you don't even take out depreciating assets, a car or whatever. That's not wealth. So understand that even this. But what I'm saying, when you look at the chart, if our number were much higher, like if you saw our little number down here, if you saw this little orange line, and like this little orange line was like half, 2/3 of the way up, and it was still below the blue, but you know, it was in there. It was in there, right? If that was the case, then you could make the case that we were making progress, or that there wasn't a caste in this country. But what you are witnessing in this country is that there's a caste. And when there's a caste, you have to undo caste. That's what you have to do. There's no other way to do it. Now, that's what we're witnessing. So you can't say, well, we're working towards equality. Yvette, what we're going to do, we're going to have an equal group. We're going to have an equal society. And equality is going to fix this, because equality is not reparations. It's not the same thing. And equality doesn't, you know, it's kind of like, it's hard to think of a good example, but it's kind of like somebody owes you something, right? And they owe you, let's say you had $500,000. And the person, and you loan the person you $500,000 or whatever the case may be, and they came back and said, well, I don't really have the money, but like, you know, I'm gonna make sure that you be good. I'm gonna make sure that like you're gonna have access to jobs, and you're gonna have stuff you need. You ain't gonna be starving. But I am starving, and like I need the money, and you're promising me, like I'm starving right now because I don't have the money. And you're telling me that like you're gonna pay me back with the promise that you're gonna fix it at some point with the policy, so I won't be starving no more. So basically, you want your promise to make me equal, which isn't reparations, my reparations. A promise to make me equal to somebody who just got here is not reparations, because they don't have the same contribution. So what you have when you look at this, when you look at this blue line, white people, right? That's white wealth, not just people. Don't look at humans, because when you look at humans, we all look the same. We all can afford khakis or something and a shirt or whatever and jeans, and we walk around and we be looking the same. Oh, they look like that's why white people got confused. Black people like they doing all right to me. I see them all the time. But here is the problem. This blue line is wealth and everything that comes with wealth. Well, what are you talking about, Yvette? Everything that comes with wealth. That is Disneyland. That's being able to pay for college. That's being able to have home ownership. This blue line is the wealth that you need to access American life. It's the thing that prevents you from living like a third worlder in the country that you built. You need to be that blue line. You can't be this little orange reddish line stuck to the bottom. That's not American life. So when we talk about reparations, it's not about a check fixing something. It's about transitioning finally into an American life. That's what reparations means. It means you are fully a citizen and you have the capital, the economic ability to access everything that's American. Because if you don't have, you can be in America all day. You can be in America all day. And if you don't have the money to access American life, what is your life really worth? I mean, in terms of first world citizenship, in terms of American citizenship. I'm not talking about spiritually or anything like that. I'm talking about in terms of what you're supposed to be able to access. You can't even really go to a restaurant and just buy and not look at. How many of us go to the restaurant and behave as calculators because we have to? And I'm not faulting us. We have to do it. We don't have a choice. If you're responsible, we don't have a choice because we don't have that. So what I'm telling you is that if you're sitting at home right now and you want your child to forget about me, forget about you for 2 seconds. If you want your child to access American life, well, my kid to be able to go to college. I want to be able to help my kid with a down payment if he falls. I want to be able to pick him up if she falls. I want to be able to pick her up. I want her to know that she has a cushion. That's what American life is. But here's the thing. In order to access that life, you need that blue line. You can't access that life through that red line. That's not the gateway to American life. That red line, that orange red line right there that's stuck to the bottom, that is not the access. That is not a key. Wealth is the key to an American life. So if you make it just about the check, you are devaluing, undervaluing everything that makes you American. You can't live in listen, this is in the richest country in the world. Eventually, if you don't have wealth, you starve out. That's what you see with this homelessness. Because there was a great, I think I had it on this show one day, I can't remember, but there was a great article in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, which showed that a lot of the people who live at these long-term stay motels, these aren't drug addicts and people who just don't want to work or whatever. The majority of these people work a job. But see, labor doesn't pay anymore. So people are getting money off of inheritance. But our inheritance was stolen. It was stolen through slavery. And then even after slavery, you had people go to convict leasing. So we don't have any inheritance. So what happens to us is we end up living like that. But you can't live like that for too long, because what happens is one day you're going to slip on a banana peel, because that's what being poor means. You're only one thing away from your whole life collapsing around you. I don't care whether it's a car repair. I don't care whether it's the kid got sick so you can't pay the rent. Eventually you're on the street and you don't have anything. That is what it means to be starved out. And if you're in America, you don't have that wealth, you end up being starved out. You can't live. See, I think we have this idea in our minds that, well, I may not have what they have, but I'll still be okay. I'll still be able to live. Maybe that I can't give my kid a down payment for a home, but I'll be able to live. No, you won't, because everything is getting more expensive. And it's not getting more expensive because, oh my God, everything is out of control. That's not why it's getting more expensive. It's getting more expensive because people have money. And then there are not even any stable jobs anymore, because we have an immigration policy that doesn't really make sense for people who are on the bottom, which is us. Makes sense for everybody else. But if you're on the bottom, it's a redistribution of wealth from the people who compete with undocumented immigrants and the people who can hire them for cheap and use and exploit them. That's what it is. So we're in quite a pickle and quite a conundrum. But reparations is the thing that takes you from here, takes you from this little orangey thing up to the blue. And you fill in the race, you fill in money. You have to pour in money until this red becomes blue. That's the erasure of whiteness. We are now right here with you. Now you cannot use and exploit us anymore. We've been doing 400 years. We finished. We have reparations, and we have an American life now. I can live in an American life that we have been robbed of for however long. That's what it means. And so I think in order to understand reparations, you don't have to, it's not a one-time thing either. Stop thinking about this. This is, as far as I'm concerned, nobody, as I mentioned, the Jewish community, and they're still getting in payments because it is an understood that you're going to have to give a lot of payments. You're going to have to make this a national project. I mean, honestly, the Jewish community, after the Holocaust, it became a global project for them to be made whole. We're talking about a national project. That's all we've really talked about so far, is a national project to make us whole. And you have to do it until we become the blue line. Because that's what American life looks like. That's the only way you do it. And so when you have to really, when somebody says, well, I just think, what I think is, I don't know what's wrong with all these black people. A check ain't gonna fix nothing. And then you ask them, like, what fixes it? And they'll say something like, well, what fixes it is equality. We have to move along on a class-based system. We have to move, and I've always said on this show that class doesn't fix race. But I want to just do a quick little review of just one quick thing that we've learned about race. And then we're going to go into some more class stuff and we're going to talk about it. But we have to understand what people are saying, because people will try to make you feel bad about getting repaid. How does that work? So let me just bring up something for you. This is about a paper about blackness and the consequence. And when I say blackness, I'm talking about ADOSness. In the paper, Collins and Wanamaker set out to understand the mechanisms that drive a wedge between incomes of blacks and whites from one generation to the next. Their big finding is this. Between 1880 and 2010, whites showed much higher rates of upward mobility than blacks, even if their parents started from the same economic position. Please hear me. Between 1880 and 2010, count the years, whites showed much higher rates of upward mobility than blacks, even if their parents started from the same economic position. There is a specific penalty for black people, which is independent of whatever income their fathers earn. The results were striking. In their 1880 to 1930 data sets, they found that the children from the least well-off white families fared better than those from the richest black families. Understand what he's saying. This is all about blackness, which is ADOSness. And this trend continued well into the 20th century. In 1973, 10 years after the Civil Rights Act was passed, the white-black mobility gap remained the same as it was in 1900. Understand that means we're making no progress. We're falling off a cliff. Falling off a cliff. That's what this means. So that's what you have to understand when somebody tells you, I want you to pay close attention to that. When somebody tells you, well, you just have to pull yourself up. We tried, and then the government and America pushed us back down. You have to fix it. It's not about a check. And anybody who says it's not about a check in terms of why don't they just, I don't understand. Why don't they just why don't they just do X, Y, Z? It's not possible. And you can't earn off your money. Let me just put this chart up here really quickly. Hold on. So what you find in this chart, I want you to compare, look at the United States. Let me see if I can bring this up a little bit bigger. The United States is in the blue. Let me see if I can make this big. Did I miss out on that part? Now I want you to see before I move it. Share of income earned by top 1%, 1975 to 2015. Okay, United States is blue. France is that kind of purplish thingy. Anyway, so understand one thing. I want you to look at the drastic share of wealth, the top 1% of whites, or about 800,000 white families taking home 20% of U.S. income today versus 7% in 1975. Versus France, their top 1% took home 6% in 1975 and take home like 8% now. Now, I want you to understand one thing. What we have, if you want to talk about class, what we have allowed to happen is kind of a robbery. So when labor, we have allowed the top 1% to run away with everything. So the question becomes, if having an American life comes from labor, our labor was stolen. And even after that labor was stolen, even after the labor was stolen, we still had a penalty for being black. How do you exist in a world without reparations? How? What you find, and people say I talk about boomers a lot, but see that boomers didn't talk about reparations because their labor was moving. They were making money off their labor. They were buying houses off of labor. That's not what happens now. You have to have somebody behind you, parent, grandparent, whoever, to pass down that inheritance to you. Right? That's the way it works. In life, remember in vivo life transfers. That's what we talked about. Pass down in life, because this is the life that we're living. Now let's move on a little bit. Because one of the things that we talked about early on is, I'm just trying to gauge this for people who say this. One of the things that we talked about early on was this. The wealth from slavery is still in the economy. And so is the poverty. Now we're going to pivot. Here's what we pivot to. What I said a second ago is that we have to talk about what reparations is not, as well as what it is. It's not solidarity. We've been doing solidarity forever, and we still stuck to the bottom. And we so stuck to the bottom, we've become a doormat for everybody else who comes here and claim solidarity, and then they claim whiteness and they move on. That don't work. This doesn't work either. Black representation does not work. So getting black faces in high places does not work. That don't work either. We found in the false premise of black political representation that black politicians can't do what they said they was gonna do. Or they get there and we don't have a bunch of people. They have with Citizens United and everything. They've made this whole thing about wealth. We don't have any wealth. So it means that our politicians who go running around everywhere else to get money for their campaigns, they have to stay fixated and focus on the white gaze as opposed to their own communities, right? Because you're raising money. So the people in control of raising money is Nancy Pelosi, the white paymasters. That's not these people. And so what happens is all the time anyway, when we feel a certain way about a certain piece of politics or a piece of policy or a set of political goals, white people want to turn the other way. But that's because we don't have any power. There is no wealth. There is no power. So when you talk about reparations, it's changing, switching up the hierarchy. It's changing our positionality. It's not just about a check. It's totally rearranging and upending and transforming America. That's what it is. If you talk about it as in it just being a check, when you try to minimize like these people, oh, they just want a check. When you talk about it, you're showing your own intellectual deficiency in terms of what you don't understand about America, about politics, and about yourself and the way wealth functions in this country. And if you want to push me on some kind of pipe dream that all of a sudden tomorrow America's going to be a socialist diaspora, I got another word for you. You want to talk to me about, well, that's just Yvette, I don't think that's going to happen. Well, I don't think what you think is going to happen either. I don't think all of a sudden tomorrow, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think the wealthiest country in the world tomorrow just becomes something else. And I think we have a do. And I know we do. You see, even if you want to see like what whiteness kind of does, right? You see, like people been talking about a little bit on Twitter, like Trump, the emoluments clause, he's doing all this stuff. All these politicians doing all this stuff, and people just, would have got, if we do it, you see what happens to us. This was in 2012. Black officials more likely probe for corruption. So is that why? Is that part of the reason that we have such a domesticated group of politicians? And I'm not saying none of these people, I'm not saying these people didn't deserve to get probed, some of them. But I don't understand why Kwame Kilpatrick is in prison for 28 years and Trump will probably walk away from this. Manafort walked away from this at 7 years. What was it, like 7 years? And the people who want to do black respectability will say, well, Yvette, you just don't understand. You don't understand because you trying to have favor with corrupt politicians. No. I'm not trying to get, please understand something. I'm not trying to get Kwame Kilpatrick out of jail. I'm telling you there should be more people in the jail. In terms of corruption. That's what equality means, right? If we're going to talk about equality, don't equality mean you keep more people in the jail? You like more people, like equality means if he got to go to jail, he got to, that means if Kwame Kilpatrick gets 28 years, fine. Then Manafort got to get his 28. He don't get 7. You don't get to do that. You don't get to do that. All these corrupt politicians, you got to go after all of them. You just can't go after Kasim Reed. You go after all of them. But we don't have any kind of way to kind of like, first of all, hold our politicians accountable. Right? Because in a way, not only do we not have wealth, but we've given up on politics, so we can't hold them accountable. And then when the feds come after them, what you do? What can you do? I don't know. I guess he got him. When you go back to this article, it was very interesting. And this was an interview with Mr. Musgrove, who wrote a book about it. And it all stems back to something else. It all stems back to civil rights. He says there are patterns of disproportionate targeting that stretch roughly from the 1960s to the mid-1990s. There's always been a recent pattern in the last 3 years with ethics investigations of members of Congress. But there's no organized conspiracy. No, I don't know what there is. Large numbers of them were being investigated. And I say large numbers, I mean in 1971, every single member of the Congressional Black Caucus was under investigation by the FBI, CIA, and the Secret Service. See, what you see is that how can we look at it and say that period did not influence the kind of politicians that we eventually got and what they're willing to do? And what they're willing to stand for and stand on. That's where we are, people. Understand that you can't have that history where of blackness and we're being attacked and all that stuff happening. You can't have us having that history and then say, well, you know what? Let's just start from right now and have equality. No, we've eaten all the costs. Everybody else is eating all the fruit. We've eaten all the costs. We can't start from right here. That's not something that we can do. We can't start from now. We've eaten all that. And we got the trauma, we got the poverty, we got everything that goes with it. And you want to say, well, you just going to be the same. See, here's the difference. Equality. Because this is what they tell us. This is what the left tells us. And it's why I kind of decided I got to walk away from the left because they crazy. Because they started telling us like, well, as long as we're equal now, as long as we're on equal footing now, that's all that matters. That's like somebody telling you that your history doesn't matter. Somebody telling you that who you are doesn't matter. And that's why equality doesn't fix it. So when we talk about the stuff that is not reparations, equality is not reparations. Having black faces in high places is not reparations. All of this stuff is a piecemeal fix. Reparations is the only comprehensive way to do what we need to do. It is a comprehensive fix. It's not going around, running around, chasing our head. Well, we gotta fix black women. Black women have health disparities. What we gonna do about mass incarceration? We need more black elected officials. Wait, one more thing. They was arresting people for loitering. We got police brutality. All of this stuff is race. All this stuff is race in America. And none of this stuff goes away without reparations and an end to whiteness. That's the only way you can fix it. I don't know everything else is chasing your tail. When I put up this thing, ex-CEOs plead guilty to roles in U.S. college admission scandal. But they're not getting no time. But y'all been chasing Cassine Reed everywhere. Now wait a minute, why is it that they don't really be doing time? They've been stealing education, frauding out everything. The feds after them. Heck, so they don't have to deal with any of this. So you can't live in a world. And I'm not in favor of no kind of fraud. I'm a ethical person. Integrity is important to me. But you can't live in a world as an ADOS person that's built on fraud. And everybody out here running around doing all kind of fraud. And you're the only one that can't do it. I'm just telling you. You can't live in that world. And the only way you fix that is through a reparations program. You have to fix that and make us the same as everybody else. Why is Manafort only going to, like I said, why is he only going to jail for 7 years? Him and Kwame Kilpatrick did almost the same thing. Two scoundrels need to get similar sentences. It don't make no sense. None of it makes any sense. See, the reason we're gonna deal with this disparity over here and this disparity over here. It don't work that way, and it's tiresome to listen to people keep talking about it that way. Let me bring this up really quickly. And this is from that article. See, I read this. Despite gains, the political clout, and I put this up before, but we need to just repeat this. Despite their gains in participation and representation, blacks continue to fare worse than whites in converting their policy preferences into law. This poor performance is more revealing than statistics on turnout or black electoral success. So we thought black politics fixed it not in terms of what we have to do. This is us doing real politics. But we thought if we got black people just in these offices, it would fix it. That ain't work. See, we've tried all this other stuff and it doesn't work. And it didn't work. I'm not here because we didn't try it. We've gone through all the other stuff and none of it worked. That's why we're here. And even though its causes remain mysterious, it is very much rational status quo. So let me go to the second one. More broadly, the results also highlight other distortions of the political process. Unsurprisingly, in this era of skyrocketing inequality and campaign finance deregulation, policymakers pay closer attention to the views of the rich than those of the poor. Okay, but people who don't like reparations keep telling me that money don't matter. And that wealth doesn't matter. In the richest country in the world, if you tell me that wealth doesn't matter, it means there's something wrong with you, not me. We tried charity. Charity doesn't fix it. We've done everything. We've done everything. We've done everything else. It doesn't fix us. And we're in an era now. Princeton Theological Seminary approves reparations. We got to be very careful about who it goes to. But how do you stand in the way of reparations during a period where you see it getting and gaining steam? What are you doing that for? Who are you doing that for? Reparations is not solidarity. It's not black representation. It's not class-based politics. It's not piecemeal politics. It's not charity. It's not UBI. It's not a job guarantee. It's not gender pay. It's not student debt cancellation. None of that is reparations. None of that makes us whole. None of that changes the positionality of ADOS. I have nothing against a job guarantee. This is about how you arrange those things. I have nothing against that. Go ahead, knock yourself out. But it doesn't work. It doesn't pay my debt. So, okay, I get a jobs guarantee. So now that I have a jobs guarantee for a 15-hour job or whatever, now I have the opportunity to make $30,000 a year at a restaurant or wherever. Is that your reparations? Doesn't change the positionality of anything. And even with the $15 without the jobs guarantee, you say, well, we're going to get the $15 minimum. Yeah, if you get the $15, they're only going to give you 3 days a week to work. So they just cut your days. Okay, we're going to get $15 an hour, but like you going to work 4 days and you going to work. They're going to figure, and we're going to put a bunch of kiosks over here. We're just going to have somebody to take the orders and one person to bring them out. And we're just going to have 3 people in there as opposed to 6. Our debt is the thing that matters. Our justice claim is what matters. It's kind of like, and we have a lot of people who are just spending a lot of time gaslighting us. That's why we don't get it. You had Dr. Adolph Reed, who I respect. He wrong. Well, the myth of class reductionism. It's not all about class, and we're not putting class as the primary thing. But then when I read you are. Just quickly. Black, female, and trans people tend to be disproportionately working class. So any measure to advance broad downward economic redistribution from Medicare for all to $15 an hour minimum wage can't coherently be said to thwart the interests of women, racial minorities, or other identity groups. What's more, this brand of class denialism artificially separates race, gender, and other ascriptive identities from the basic dynamics of American capitalism. You ever had a sentence you read or something you didn't understand what they said, and I don't think they understand what they said when they wrote it? Adolph, what that mean? What the hell that mean? Let me read it again. Let me go back to the top. People just writing to write. Black, female, and trans. First of all, what kind of group is this? Where did you pull this group from? Black, female, and trans people tend to be disproportionately working class. You just pulled a group. So any measure of advanced broad downward economic redistribution from Medicare for all to hourly minimum wage can't coherently be said to thwart. See, this is how you do. This is the old bait and switch. Nobody said that if you do a class-based policy, it would hurt us. We did not say that. We said that we have a justice claim that you need to pay, that America owes a debt, not only for slavery, but the accrued disadvantage. Nobody said that Medicare for all will hurt us. We said that's not reparations, and reparations is our due, and that's not a transformative thing that specifically impacts us and elevates us as a specific group. So you're arguing against something that it was a case that never was made. Nobody ever made that case to you. Not no race reductionists, not nobody ever made the case to you. That's not what they made. And for you to say that class reductionism doesn't exist is a lie anyway. They're making this all about class. Ain't nothing about black or white. And if you're not, why don't you do it? If you don't, why don't you say we're going to do reparations, we're going to do this too? If that's the case, why don't you do everything? You won't do that. All you do and you talk about is class-based politics is a religion to these people. They don't want to do anything else. And that's why they never talk about it. If you really wanted to deal with everything, you would. You're just saying the same thing. It's gonna fix you and the trans people and it's gonna fix Molly, and it's gonna fix Betty and the Billy Goat. That is why, as historian Torrey F. Reed, who I should disclose is my son, points out, mainstream civil rights leaders through the 1930s and 40s argue that precisely because most blacks were working class, racial equality could only be achieved through a combination of anti-discrimination policies and social democratic economic policies. Listen, I don't agree. I agree. I have no problem with agreeing that you should do anti-discrimination. Absolutely. Knock yourself out. I agree with that. Do it. How does any of this fit, though, with the idea that we shouldn't have, that we don't get? See, let me just say this. What the anti-discrimination policy is for, or what it should be for, and you got to understand that those people were trying to figure out, those people came before us. They didn't know what we know now. They hadn't lived to 2019 and been like, wow, it never improved. But what has to happen is once you put in place reparations, you put in place a series of laws, a series of anti-discrimination laws to protect the positionality that reparations has afforded us. That's how you do that. You put that in place to protect what has been betrothed to us so that we can have ownership. We can have access to capital that's not predatory. We can have access to the stuff that we weren't able to get because we were locked out. So you position us with wealth, then you give us access to all the stuff we couldn't have access to, and you make it to where people can't discriminate against us and people can't lock us out. All of those laws are in place after that. But right now, wealth is locked in for a certain group. You can't have it doesn't work the way he thinks it works. I'm trying to figure out if everybody understands or we all live in the same America, because it doesn't feel that way. Once it was effectively decoupled from political economic dynamics, racism became increasingly amorphous as a charge or diagnosis, a blur of attitudes, utterances, individual actions, and pattern disparities, an autonomous force that acts outside of historically specific relations. Today, it serves as a single all-purpose explanation for mass incarceration, the wealth gap, the wage gap, police brutality, racial disproportionate rates of poverty and unemployment. What he's basically telling you is that, like, you see race in places that it doesn't exist. He's telling you that in a time where we have studies that show the specific disparities of race and racism. Equality. I promised a short show, so I'm gonna lock it up. But I just wanted to make this case. Equality is sameness. You're the same as me. I'm the same as you. We're in the same country. We citizens. Equality is sameness. But imagine this. Imagine being ADOS. Your family, your ancestors built this country, and as repayment for hundreds of years, got bottom casted. And all of a sudden, what you get in exchange for that is being the same as someone who just came to America last year. That is what equality is. Equality is not reparations, and equality is not something that we should seek. Now, after reparations, by all means, let's do it. But that's not where we are. And that's not who we are. And we have to understand who we are, understand our claim, and understand that equality is not the same as us as a multi-generational project to make this group whole that everybody seems to be glossing over, and everybody has glossed over for a very long time. And we are the generation that sees. See, everybody else didn't have the data. They didn't know. And they had labor for a period after the civil rights movement, and labor was making it look like, okay, I can really be mobile and access the American dream. Now that's over. You have to have inheritance. When you know better, you do better. And it's time to do better and understand that equality is not reparations, and the only thing that makes us whole is reparations. So I'm going to leave that as my last word. Quick show. Give me a few minutes up the phones and we will be back. right, fam, we are back, and I just wanted to provide, in that I really didn't want to go hard today or anything. I just really wanted to kind of provide like clarity, because everybody keeps trying to like give us this reset. We just got to reset, and we just got to all be equal now, and that's not fair. That's not what justice looks like. And I just wanted to kind of take the moment to kind of like, let's be clear on what the debt is. Let's be clear on what we're owed. And let's be clear on what justice looks like for us, not what everybody is trying to convince us to do for them. Because everybody wants to redistribute wealth to everybody else. Student debt cancellation that doesn't even, for the most part, affect ADOS. We're like, black is like a little over 20%. ADOS is less than 20. So, they don't have any problem with money and passing money around for everybody else. It's just not us. And we have to be very clear that, like, you have no problem cutting checks. Y'all ain't got no problem cutting checks. You just don't want to cut no check over here for slavery and accrued disadvantage because you don't benefit. So let's be very clear about what you're doing. And let's not let anybody start talking about, well, y'all just want to cut a check. Whatever candidate you for wants to cut a check. Republicans want to cut all the checks to rich people. Bernie and Elizabeth Warren, debt cancellation. They want to cut checks over there. Everybody, that's a check. When you cancel out, that's a check. That money comes from the Treasury. That's a check. Everybody's cutting checks. Don't let nobody make you feel guilty because you want a check that's old. That's not even old. That's not even owed to you. You just want to stabilize the white middle class and by cutting the check, but you don't want to cut a check for something that's old. So we have to just really clarify that. Oh, everybody want to play games and play stupid all the time. Or maybe they are. I don't know. So I want to go to 708. 708, what's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Yvette, John from Chicago.
What's going on, John?
Another night. Thank you again for another awesome show.
Oh, I appreciate it.
And I hope that I can share something tonight that will bring something to the conversation.
Okay.
Because I love callers that bring something to the conversation. I would like to start by saying, do-for-selfers like Hispanics have a terrible tendency to suck all of the air out of the room. They don't believe the transformative government that you speak of is important. People honestly believe that they're on millionaire's row. I'm on my way to being a millionaire, and I could work my way to being a millionaire with a job. Not the point of a job to make you a millionaire. But I don't think these people believe that their children, if we don't get reparations now and make this the primary point of our political agenda, our grandchildren will be reduced to beggars in this country.
Yep.
And I mean, we're practically almost there. I mean, we're 34 years from 2053. That's not a lot of time. I would also like to say that I don't think people realize how easily and quickly white people can come into that status of middle class. But may I explain something?
Go ahead.
A difference between the families, and I'm going to get off the phone because I know there are plenty of callers that want to get in. You may have a white couple, a husband and a wife. The husband may have a mother and a father with a pension and a middle-class life, but they may also have a grandmother and a grandfather with that same status. And the wife could have the very same setup or situation. But because we were robbed, because when the country was growing, my grandparents were robbed of the ability to be the most consequential people in my life. Because it's those grandparents, like you said, that allow in vivo life transfers to happen.
Absolutely.
As we mature. So we have to understand that the white people did not do that on their own. It was government that made it possible.
Always.
And I don't see how people could be so upset that we're asking for the government to make us whole, because it was the government that caused the problem. And we need to stay on point and stay on beat. And I just appreciate you and Tone so much for bringing this to light for the ADOS community. Because again, if we don't get this together, not only our grandchildren will be beggars in this country as well. Thanks, Yvette.
No, thank you, fam. I appreciate it. And you might as well say just say beggars again, right? You know, because that's kind of what you slaves to. I mean, it's the most awful thing. And I think we have to see, part of this too was always identity. Because in order to understand like what you're owed, that's why we did ADOS. You have to understand what you're worth, and you know, and why you're worth that. That's the identity element of this. But if you don't get on the ball and just stop being scattered. See, what happens is, and let me just say this real quick, and I'm going to the next caller. We feel like, too many of us, that we have the ability to be raceless, right? So I can say, well, I think so-and-so should advocate for us, but that's not going to be good for him. So the CBC, they should advocate for us, but that's not going to be good for them. So, we got to let them do what they got to do to be there. No, if you can't advocate for us, then don't be there. Then you can't be, then that means that we don't have black politicians, which means that we can look on Capitol Hill and see all white people and know what that means. I don't need you to be there giving me the impression that we have power when I know that we don't. When your level of effectiveness shows me that we don't. If you can't advocate for us, see, until we are made whole, this should be, if you're an ADOS politician, this should be your thing. We let people get way out of pocket in believing that, they ADOS and they can just, I saw Cory Booker, and I great shout out for doing HR 40 in the Senate and all that. But I saw you, and you're not going to win, Cory. Dang, like, understand that. Just understand that. You're never going to be president, my dude. You don't have it. But, I appreciate you and what you did in terms of HR 40 and all that stuff. But like, why can't you just now just advocate for us? You're not winning. I don't think that's in the cards for you in this life, but it's certainly not right now. It's certainly not in 2000 and what year we in? 2019, 20, right? It's certainly not. So why can't you just be a race man? Nobody wants to be a race man or woman we're still stuck in this stuff. You don't get to walk away and be like, well, I'm just going to talk about what's politically feasible. No. I need you right here. Especially if you're going to talk about how much you live in the ghetto and you see poor people. Hey, what's up? And somebody saw T-Bone. Okay, listen, do your thing then. You don't get to talk about, the experts. You need to say, well, you know what I want to see Cory Booker say? When some people say, I saw JB put video. And I want him to say, like, it's going to be at least 17 trillion, but we have to work out the details. It's going to take a long time. It's going to be a multi-generational project, I'm sure. And yeah, say it like you say stuff. Just say it. Don't try to, you sound like a white politician. And like, I don't know why we send ADOS politicians to Capitol Hill. They just going to sound like everybody else. Let's just come home. Isn't there a pension or something? Anyway, I'm going to, right now, I am going to 361. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hi, Yvette. This is Marcus from Corpus Christi, Texas.
What's going on, Texas?
Not much. Listening to you, my dear. May you live to be 1,000 years old doing what you're doing. I love it, Yvette. Yeah,
I appreciate it.
Yvette, I would have imagined that since the beginning of this campaign, this run for the presidency, that the E word, which you are talking about tonight, equality, would have been the first thing on every candidate's mind. The second point I'd like to make is, in order for us to advance, I seriously believe that we need to dethrone black politicians that are just there. We need to seriously clean house and make sure that we take part in the political process from the beginning to the end. Don't just vote. Take part in the process. The elections. It's not just a one step. There are many steps, and we have the ability to take part in all steps involved to make sure that our representatives do just what we sent them wherever. Capitol Hill, local, federal, state, and local governments, that they do our bidding, the black community's bidding. It's about time for people to start bending a knee. If you want our votes, we need to see you bend a knee and ask, what is it that we can do for you here? The last point I'd like to make is about the United States Constitution and equality.
Okay.
There is none. There is no mention of equality within that piece of paper.
Does it say something about, what does it say, all men created equal? Don't it say that, something like that?
Well, I mean, but let's look at when that was written. And let's look at and who it applied to. Now, yes, it says, I was looking at inalienable rights today. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But see, that didn't have anything to do with the African in America, with the African in chains. See, Moscow Lynch, we all heard what he said about reparations and full restitution for the descendants of slaves. He said, and I quote, "That's not a good idea. I don't believe that's a good idea." Why? Because they have enjoyed and just as you pointed out earlier, the wealth of slavery is still being enjoyed by the 1%, the top 1% of this country and abroad. So we're not owed something. It's not a good idea. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It's an excellent idea. And I guarantee you, my dear, we will make it happen. In our lifetime, we are going to see this happen for our people.
All right.
Thank you, Yvette.
No
I love
problem.
you
Thank
dearly.
you.
And
Thank
keep
you.
on rolling.
I appreciate it. Thank you for calling in. Thank you for calling in, brother. I appreciate.
Sure.
I appreciate you. And I think, I agree with him. I agree with him that it certainly wasn't intended for us at the time. But we here and we citizens, and I think it wasn't in the Declaration of Independence, wasn't it? Declaration of Independence. Yeah. Declaration. If I'm wrong, let me know. And then it was kind of codified for us when we talk about the Civil Rights Act of 1866. That's after the Civil War, and that's when it became like, yeah, we're going to include ADOS. Okay, they're going to be made into this patchwork of Americana. And that's what should have happened. That's what didn't happen. You see, it says all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process or law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. That's the 14th. Listen, and also read Abraham Lincoln Gettysburg Address during the Civil War, right? Because it kind of goes to the same thing. So America is kind of tried to went from white people. This is who is for white men, landowners, and they had their wives, so it's held in white families still, all the way to making it for us, but not really. So the only thing ADOS has ever done is try to make America be the country that you said you were. Especially, not just for especially for us. Who do you think you are? Who do you think we are? Go hit up that 14th Amendment. Anyway, fam, let me get to the next call. I'm running my mouth. I am going now to I'm going down to 904. 904, what's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind? You there, 904? Hello?
Hey, Yvette.
Hey, what's going on?
Hey, Yvette. How you doing? I just wanted to tell you thank you so much for opening my eyes to a lot of this stuff that's going on.
No problem.
We all been blind for a long time. And now with the internet and YouTube and everything, I think all the people that really tell the truth are starting to be heard. And I think the main thing that we shouldn't be doing right now is talking about anything else besides reparations. We shouldn't be talking about nothing else at all. We don't have time for it. We are in the bottom, like on the brink of being gone, and we worried about gossip news and reality shows and the next rap star. And it's just ridiculous because everybody else is going in for seconds and thirds of the pie, and we have
seconds and thirds. Seconds and thirds of the pie. Another bite of the apple. Give me another one.
They on Twitter right now talking about all the things they're going to do for the Native Americans and all the things they're going to do for these Spanish immigrants and all that. And they've been doing these things for them, and they're coming back getting more and more. And we haven't gotten anything. And it's ridiculous. Like, we're not showing any interest in self at all.
Well, we don't understand collective self-interest. We don't understand collective self-interest. We don't understand it at all. We don't understand it like we have to be on the same page. And it doesn't matter, and I'm gonna let you have the last word, caller, but I have a theory that like we're so invested because no other group has been enslaved like we have. Like the Native Americans fought. Like that was a war, and they lost, but it was a war. They fought the white people who came here. Like we were enslaved, and so the way we were rendered has just been very, very different. You understand what I'm saying? Like, so to kind of, it's hard to explain, but what we have done is, in order to stay alive, right, we had to really just kind of understand white people. Whether you were working as a maid or a butler or a slave, you had to understand what upset that person, and you had to be keen and attuned to it. It's almost like we have kind of inherited that because that's how we still work.
And we have like inherited like this wish factor, or this, if we just do right, then Jesus is going to do this for us or do that, and we're not realizing that these white people had everything that they had. It hasn't been on luck. It hasn't been on Jesus coming down and doing something for them, but that's kind of all that we have ever had to hang on to even feel like we're going to get anything out of this life. But everything that they got it on our back.
You absolutely right.
It's kind of like we don't understand how they accumulate. What we're aspiring to the things that that they have, but we're not understanding how they got that way. And it was on our backs.
Absolutely.
And if we were just able to get from them what they took from us, we wouldn't have to be sitting here wishing and aspiring.
Absolutely. You're right.
I just don't understand how we just got so turned around, but I know a lot of it is all of the propaganda and all of this stuff that's on TV and all of that. When Martin Luther King was doing the marching and all, they didn't have all of that propaganda from these cell phones and internet and social media just bombarding them all the time. So they could kind of think. We've gotten so hit so hard with all of this propaganda that we just so distracted right now. It's pathetic. It's pathetic how distracted we are from what's really going on.
Yeah, I agree.
And what you hit on when you talk about it's not about skin color, and you really, really just drilled it into me when you said, Indians are darker than us, and they're running the tech industry.
Yeah.
Like like you just drilled that in for me, and ever since you said that, I've been looking at it like it's not black or white. It's only American or not.
Yep. And it's ADO
Like,
and it's ADOS or not? Because we the ones at the bottom. It's not like, well, it's all no. Go into
right.
go into a room sometimes with some other it's with some other people who are brown, but you're in a majority white room and everybody it's all the same. You'll be the only one looking like, dang. But go ahead, Carl. Finish up. I'm sorry.
Right. No, that's all I was going to say. I was just calling in to tell you thank you so much. I will be trying my best to share with everybody that I can share it with. I think about just getting you some flyers with just your information, your channel.
Oh, thank you, fan. I
and just
appreciate
pass it
that.
on to all my brothers and sisters.
I appreciate it.
And we can get to where we need to be.
I appreciate it,
I
fan.
just want to say thank you so much. I love you. I will be supporting
Love you
you
back.
for as long as I'm here, and I know we're going to get somewhere. It might not be in this lifetime, but we're going to get there.
Yeah, I appreciate it, fan. And listen, she made a good point. Like the play you make for your community is past your lifetime. The play you make. Do you think when when people were when the Jewish community was fighting the Holocaust and all that stuff, do you think they were just making a play for reparations for just them? You make a play for like not just you. You making a play for you, but you making a play to hit the ball all the way to other generations. Like you want to hit the ball all the way down. And I think when I think about it, sometimes I think about it when I talk about the white gays. I'm not trying to be mean, but I think we have so invested in like making everybody else happy. That's what happens when you are kind of a domesticated and neutered group. Because we've had to be, and that's not nothing to us. That's what happens when you are slaves and domestics and stuff like that happens. You have to be a certain way, and we haven't kind of come out of that and said, forget all that for a second. What's good for me? Like I don't have to just looking. Well, the Democrats say do this. I don't want no trouble. I don't want no trouble. I don't want no bad blood. What? No. What's good for me? What's best for me? Answer that question. So I'm going to my next caller. I am going to. I'm going to 214. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind? Hello, 214.
Hello?
Hey, what's going on? Turn down your background for me.
Hello?
Turn down your background for me.
Yes, oh, hold on just a minute. Yes.
Okay.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's much better. Thank you. What's going on?
Hey, I have been watching your show. First of all, I am glad this first time calling,
Okay.
and I'm very glad to be able to get through on the show.
Okay.
And I have been watching a lot of your videos, and and I've been here recently trying to be involved in the ADOS movement.
Okay.
And but the two topics you're talking about tonight are very interesting topics to me. And I try to, I go on Facebook, and I haven't quite got my YouTube channel set up yet. But I go up under the agnostic preacher, and that's a whole other story. I know we don't have time for that, but other callers. But the deal, that bothers me is that everybody keeps saying, cut the check. It's not, that's, why people look at that like we're asking for another welfare check. And we need to be saying, I want my payments and reparations, not a payment, my payments and reparations, what is owed there, because when it comes to the equality part about it, is that we have been left out of that system, like I started studying history, black history, when I went to seminary, because it opened up a lot of doors for me to look at black history in a different way. And a real important thing the professor told me in class was, once you understand the history, biblical history, you will see history repeat itself over and over. And so I try to use that as a pattern to try to solve problems, because that's the way people been solving
and like the greatest time black people ever had in America was during the civil rights movement. And Martin Luther King set down a pretty good pattern for us to follow and to continue. You know? And like when he started the poor people deal, he was talking about reparations, but he was using it in a different language. And like he said, we got to get the language right in order to move forward in this group. But, I mean, it really bothers me when people just constantly being cut the check. I don't want a check. I want to stop paying in reparations. I want to build not only an industry, but the community also at the same time.
All right. Thank you for calling in, Carl. I appreciate it. I appreciate you for calling in and sharing it. I think we had a little bit of a bad connection though, because I couldn't hear a lot of stuff. I'm going now to 214. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hey, Yvette. Good evening. This is James. I'm here in Austin, Texas. How are you?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
Great. Okay, just a couple quick questions. Okay. I'll put them in the chat, but wanted to get a response. One, so what's your take? Should we be, voting, as in the primary elections and the caucuses and the primaries? And then my second question is, do you think there would be any value to individuals trying to bring specific lawsuits against the families of former slave owners? And those are my two questions.
Well, I'll take your second question first. I think the foremost thing, I think sometimes we get lost in the weeds, right? So like, I think we get lost in the weeds. I have no problem with lawsuits against whoever, but I think we have to focus on America, right? Because America is the government, and it made slavery legal, and it made slavery fruitful and profitable, and so America did this, and America allowed this. So in terms of our first and foremost focus, it can't be the slave, because the slave owners are going to tell you it was legal. How are you going to sue me for doing a legal thing? Now, I'm not saying there's no grounds for it. I'm not an attorney. But what I'm saying is that you have to, that's why you have to go after America for allowing something that we now know is an abominable thing. It built America, but it robbed us of everything. So I think, to keep your eyes on the prize, you have to keep your eyes on America. Regarding voting, yes, I think we vote.
I agree.
I think if the Democrats, we invited all of them to the conference, they didn't come through. So I said, not only are we doing Project Takeover, where we join our NAACPs and our local black organizations, and even, if you're a Christian, if you're not a Christian, I'm not pressuring you to do anything. Go to, if you're a Muslim, go to your mosque. If you're a Buddhist, do your thing. If you're an atheist, I love you, whatever. I don't discriminate. But even if you are a black Christian, you need to take your church back, because your church ain't. If you don't just complain about it. So, but the other side of that is we show up, and if they don't come through, we vote Democratic down ballot. Now, what that means for me is, I said this. I think there's always somebody on the ballot for you to show up for. Now, that person may just be a person who's, that city council or whatever. They may just be a prosecutor or whatever. You may show up just to not really vote for somebody, but you're voting against somebody that is a low down dirty dog. So I don't really necessarily like this person as much, but we're not filling in that whole presidential thing if they don't act right. Do you understand what I'm saying? Now they have time. Yeah. What I will say, even with the primary, before we get the primary in general and all that, they have time. They can still do something. But I'm saying that we're going to end up voting down ballot, because we're not going to just show up. Well, this one is just, I don't see any, I'm not seeing in terms, even in the primary, if you have a chance to write in ADOS. If you don't, then that's just what it is. But there are a lot of other judges and different things on the ballot. It's not just these people on your ballot. When I go vote, it's a bunch of different things on my ballot. Do you vote for referendum 32 to add taxes to collect the dog poop from side road? What you said? You said what? Can I step out? I think I missed something. It's all sorts of stuff on there, and that's the kind of stuff you still have to show up. Like, we don't benefit from not showing up. You have to show up. That's the way I feel. You have to show up. Now the big thing is going to be the general. You know, the big thing is going to be the general. When like, oh, you just got to vote and you got to get Trump. That's going to be the big one. But I think we still show up for the primary. Like, I think you still show up for it.
Correct.
And if we get to that,
so that was a great clarification.
Yeah.
Because I was clear on the idea of voting, the down ballot in the primaries. I appreciate your clarifying this issue on the primaries though as well.
You mean you were clear on the general? You were just clarifying for the primary?
For the general, rather.
Okay,
yes.
okay.
Pardon. Thanks for the correction.
Yeah, I don't because it's not like everybody goes and it's just like your primary Democratic candidates on the ballot. It's a whole lot of other stuff on there.
Yeah.
So I think you have to show up for that.
Definitely.
All right.
So the only other thing I would add real quick, and because this is kind of getting into tangent, but you mentioned Christians and Jews and so forth. So I am a Christian. That is for me kind of a major motivation for having a concern about justice. Now that being said, my church is not very politically active. We are involved like in a lot of social ministries and social things, and so I think that's a separate discussion, but I wouldn't discount churches that aren't necessarily explicitly political in their orientation for having an overall social value, as well as, of course, primarily spiritual value.
Yeah. But I think here's the thing I say. I think churches have to become more political. Now I know in terms of 501c3 for whatever status, you can't become overtly in that way. But I think you have to become. I think churches have to really kind of, instead of just being these spiritual entities, they really have to start. They have to start evoking, the justice that Jesus preached and what that means in your life, like what that means in your material life, not just how to get up in the morning.
Yeah.
I think you have to do that, and I think
I have experience with churches that have been overtly political. So I'll just say I'm going to do my best to attend the next ADOS conference, and I would love to participate in a debate on that subject, because to me, if you do that, I think you run the risk of actually undermining and corrupting the potential of the church to do more serious work. But that's obviously
like what though. Let me push back. Like, what's more serious than like making sure your people don't die?
Well, what's more serious is the message of the gospel itself and the potential for confusing that message. If you obviously, Jesus talks about doing justice, which comes from an Old Testament prophetic tradition, but Jesus' main message was the kingdom. You won't find Jesus preaching a message of social justice per se, if you read the Gospel of John. So and then Apostle Paul talks about this more. You can't confuse or as a church preach another gospel, a different gospel, because then it's not the gospel and it undermines the power of God to make changes, spiritual change in the life of people, when you try to mix the message of redemption and regeneration with one of political evangelism.
Well, I don't think justice is political evangelism.
Well, because so here's the other aspect of that. So the Bible, the prophetic tradition of the prophets, it obviously has a strong social justice orientation, but that was subject to a theocratic reality where God was directly ruling Israel, and the idea that he gave them specific social justice mandates. But as Christians, we believe that those mandates of justice are ultimately realized in Jesus Christ, the person of Jesus Christ, and his message and his work. So, if you read like the book of Galatians, read also Luke chapter 8, you'll see Jesus focuses on the gospel and the fact that there has to first be a focus on internal regeneration. And so again, I know that's not an easy thing for people necessarily to hear right up front, but the question is if it's true, and I would just invite people to study the Gospels for themselves to make some determination on that.
All right, caller. I will invite people to do that, but and thank you for calling in. I will say that there's only one word that the Bible mentions more than love, and that's justice. And I mentioned last time. Remember the last time the show was here? The show was here, Lord. Like I move around. Remember the last time I did the show and I said hold your mule or something? There's a Shirley Caesar song about hold your mule, and the beginning of the song is very interesting about going to somebody was going to a dead church. Like he couldn't go to a dead church. Like if you have this kind of, I don't feel any kind of, and this is just me. This is my opinion, but I don't feel God moving through your church. Like this feels like she talked about a dead church in the song. That feels like a very dead church to me, where you just kind of like, it feels like a Dodge. But you can debate a theologian about that. It's not me, but that wouldn't be my. I wouldn't bother with that Jesus. He's very boring. I prefer the Jesus that turned over tables and tried to run money changers out. I don't like that Jesus that just whatever you got going. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. Anyway, but everybody don't. I won't turn this into a religious show, but I just wanted him to say what he had to say because he obviously had something to say. Let the man talk. Anyway, I am going. I mean, somebody said it's not above my head. Like I have my opinions, but in terms of what I've done and what I've read, but I'm not going to turn this into that show. Like I just think that's kind of, I'll keep my thoughts to myself. I'll take Dr. Cosby over, like, it was just spiritual and it was just you just have to let God move within people. God works through people. He doesn't just move inside. Like anyway, let me go. I'm going to 765. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hey, what's going on, Yvette? This is Jermaine calling from Dallas again.
What's going on? How you doing?
Just wanted to run a couple things by you. I think it's a three-parter. So I want to tell you I thoroughly enjoyed the ADOS conference.
Oh,
I was not able
great!
to make it, but I did watch it online.
Ah, awesome. Wonderful.
And let's just say I almost threw hands in the barbershop over the ADOS conference. The owner came over there and tried to make me turn it off. I said, dude, I paid good money to listen to this.
I know that's right. What you turn off for what? For what?
So, I wanted to kind of, let you in on like some things I done learned in the barbershop, because I remember the last time I told you the longer you listen to someone, they eventually start telling you about where they come from and how they got their wealth.
Yeah.
Well, the owner of the barbershop, his great grandfather or great grandfather was an immigrant from the Caribbean. I can't remember exactly what country he came from. Well, when he came here, he had wound up buying up a bunch of land in Texas, but he did it through a white man that had befriended him, and he wound up giving the white man a piece of the land or whatnot. But that's how you wound up getting so much land here. Okay. So, and then that kind of eventually turned into what they had today. So that's why he has this attitude towards poor Black Americans, is because he didn't come from us. Oh. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. He came from a lineage where he always had money. His family always had land. They get oil rights, they get oil payments and things like that. And he also owns some property over in Baltimore and a number of other places. So that kind of, let me in on where he got his wealth from. The second thing I wanted to talk about was that I had gotten into a debate with a Native American. She's half Native American and half Mexican yesterday on Facebook. Okay. And she kind of asked me a question that I could not answer. She was talking about how Black Latinos or Afro-Latino, whatever you want to call them, the indigenous Black folks in America, and she was talking about how they were enslaved as well. And she said,
who was enslaved?
Would they be covered?
Who was enslaved?
She said that the Afro-Latinos or the indigenous Black people in this country were also enslaved.
Listen, the first thing, they were There were Native Americans who owned us. So let's talk about that. But the second part about it is like, stop. People will get you focusing on an aberration, right? The majority of the enslaved in this country were people who were brought over from Africa, right? So like, let's not focus on aberrations. Like, people will be like, if we say we built America, well, the Chinese built the railroads. Okay, but what are you talking about? When you look up the numbers and you look up our numbers and what we built, like, come on. Like, people will get you fixated on one aberration and just ask them, what's the number? Tell me how many. How many and for how long? Oh, you don't know?
Okay.
How don't you know? Because I can tell you that the overwhelming majority of people who built the country in this country were ADOS. I mean, were slaves. They're not descendants at that time, but these were slaves. These were chattel slaves brought over from Africa. So I don't know what you're talking about. What are those numbers? How long were those people enslaved? See, what people will do, like, they'll give you like this little aberration, like, well, you know, there was one person that was and he actually was an islander and he was enslaved. What would you do for him? What are you talking about? Don't give me, like, when you see somebody giving you something, a group that was a minority of a minority of a minority, and you want me to focus on that instead of focusing on me, you're basically telling me that you're anti-reparations, right? Because you're focusing on a very small group. It's an aberration. It's kind of like, one day I said on the show, like, we know, something about, you know, women get breast cancer, and the implication is that men don't. I know that there's some men that get breast cancer, but if you show up in the chat or you show up in the comments saying, Yvette, men get breast cancer, and here are the statistics. Yeah, the statistics show me that far less than women. That's the point. That was the whole point. You're focusing on an aberration to take my eye off of what I'm talking about. I know that, but I know the numbers as well, and I know who gets it the most. Is who, you know, so that's what they do. They want us to focus on these aberrations. Like, they come in and say, well, Yvette, let me tell you something. You say that people, enslavers, should get reparations. Well, what about the black people who own slaves? Yvette, what about them? Okay, first of all, you're anti-reparations, but what about that? Guess what? The black people who were here, they had been slaves. Nobody came here without being a slave, so they were still from slaves. Shocker. So even if they bought back an ancestor, or even if they owned a slave, they still were from that. They still didn't, you didn't get over here. So it's just when people start to push you to focus on an aberration, right? When they start focusing on you to, like, when you see, when we talk about the Chinese, 20,000 Chinese built railroads between 1848 and 1865, and they were paid, you know, but they weren't slaves. So people will tell you, you didn't build America, you weren't the Chinese. It don't make no sense. They just want you to focus on something to take your eye off what you are. They're anti-reparations. That's what they are.
Right. And trust and believe, I didn't fall for any of this. You know what I mean? I just want, you know what I mean, trying to get your point on that. But then I also see a lot of people in the chat that were talking that, you know, because there's a lot of people that talk about, well, black people were here before white men got here, you know. And how I would like to respond to that is, if you were here before white people got here, and you were enslaved as a black man, and you identify as Adolf now, and you've been doing this your entire life, and your family comes through slavery, then wouldn't that still mean that you qualify for reparations? Why are you trying to separate?
I don't even get into those "we were here first" people. Even if a small group of people were, the majority came through the Middle Passage. I don't even get involved in it. They can miss me with that too.
You know what I think it is? Yvette, I think these are I put these guys in the same group that I put these guys in the same category. A lot of them are just trying to escape ADOS.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to, you're trying to escape it by saying, well, you were here first. You know, instead of just saying, like, okay, we all have been in the same boat. We've all dealt with the same thing as far as coming from slavery. So we all should be fighting for reparations. But you're so caught up on escaping ADOSness, or, you know what I mean, or American blackness, because it's such a, you know what I mean, like you said, we're a contagion of wealth.
Yeah. And it's almost like you want to believe you're a superhero. But yeah, it's almost like you want to be a superhero. I didn't come from a slave. I don't know where they found that slave ship at. Where they found that at? I don't even, wasn't none here. That ain't no truth. That's just a lie. It's just a lie. It's just like, come on, man. Slavery was real. That's what over nearly all of us came from. Like, stop with the BS. Like, stop with all this stuff. We were all here. They tried to make us think we all wasn't here. Wasn't no ships. Ships where? Show me one.
Right. Well, let me go ahead and get off this phone. Yvette, man, again, I appreciate you. Like I said, I didn't give up on nobody in that shop. I told you I had to stand my ground in that because, man, I almost threw hands in that. And I'm glad that I sat there. And I'm glad that I sat there and still sat there and listened to the ADOS conference. There was so many eye-opening things from a lot of people.
I appreciate it, fam.
The last one that talked about housing.
Yeah, Serena.
I had to sit my fiance down like, we gotta watch this. If we don't see anything else during the ADOS conference, you don't watch anything else. You have to watch this portion. Because we are looking into buying a house. We ain't got the money to do that right now. But that's something we're trying to look into. Okay. So, like, I gained a lot from it. And I want to thank y'all for doing that. No, and I'm going to try my best to make the next one.
All right. Yeah, we'll see you out there. You're going to come, fam. You're going to come through. I got faith in you. Thank you.
All right.
No problem. Let me just say something real quick about the what I was saying earlier about the 20,000 Chinese who from 1848 to 1855, they toiled through backbreaking labor during both frigid winters and blazing summers. Hundreds died from explosions, landslide accidents, and diseases. And even though they made major contributions to the construction of the transcontinental railroad, these 15 to 20,000 Chinese immigrants have been largely ignored through history. Looking back, historians say the Chinese who began arriving in the United States in significant numbers during the California Gold Rush of 1848 to 1855 were deemed too weak for dangerous, strenuous job of building the railroad east from California. Those same people are, these people who are arguing for the Chinese are the same people saying there were no slave ships and all this stuff. Listen, just go look at it. Your bodies couldn't do the work. It just for not too long. It just fell apart and stuff. So we built America. Let's just say that. I'm probably going to be my last caller because I am at. I wanted to end at an hour and 40 minutes as opposed to how I usually end. I am going to 678. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Oh, what are you doing tonight, sir?
Pretty good. Speak up a little bit for me.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to take these headphones off. Okay, hello?
Yes.
Okay, all right, I'm back. All right, my name is Chris, and I'm calling from Covington, GA tonight.
Okay.
I wanted to break down a little history about with the reparations, and I think it's important that as ADOS, which I am an ADOS person, and I'm very proud first and foremost, but I'd like to break down a little history about where what our position is really supposed to be in this country, and what it is in this country. We literally built the country with free labor. Mm-hmm. But the history that I want to break down is that when you start to look at what was going on during slavery, which is a part of it, there were railroads already built from, north to south and south to north, because the South had to get the supplies up to north so they could be, utilized. So that the Chinamen, they're not the first people to build the railroads, or they were not the first people to even, build the country. Now, they were able to connect the railroads from east to west, but when they came here, they got a job. They got paid for doing the labor that they did. We never got paid for that. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people need to understand this too. Now, I used to be the person that used to kind of go against the grain of where, well, we weren't Native Americans, but we really were. We would take a look at the Folsom people. That's spelled Folsmo, Folsom people.
And if we take a look at those people, these people were Aborigines. These people were the first people. It's believed to think that that these people may have looked like the Aborigines that we see over in Australia. Very dark people, nappy, kinky hair. That these people were the original people in this country, which are Africans.
So did slavery happen or no? Did slavery happen or no?
Yes, slavery did happen. Slavery did happen.
So why are we talking about this?
I'm not discounting that.
I said, why are we talking about this then?
Oh, I was just putting in a little extra history on it. From the beginning of it, but I mean, slavery definitely happened. No, I'm not discrediting that or discarding that at all. But I was just, a lot of people don't really know it. But I mean, I think the other reason too is why they don't want us to have reparations as well, is because they've seen us what we were before they even made us into slaves or used us for slave labor. I mean, look at what we did in Europe. I mean, we built Europe. So I mean, look they know what we would do with reparations if we got it. When we got it.
Well, thank you for calling, caller. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. Shit. But let me just put something out there. Before the Civil War, railroads in the South were built almost entirely by African American slaves. The antebellum South built a grand total of 8,784 mile tracks. If the tracks were laid out in a straight line, it would have been enough to span the width of the continental United States nearly three times, a staggering amount. Contrast that with the Chinese, whose bodies didn't work well and they couldn't do it. Which was, now you contrast that, the antebellum, you contrast that, which will go continental United States, span the width of the continental United States nearly 3 times, right? To the transcontinental that the Chinese immigrants built. Just think about that. And so the reason I get annoyed, like with the last caller, is because y'all want to focus on something else. Like, well, the Aboriginals, and that ain't the point. That ain't the point. I don't care. I care about what these ancestors built, like, and what that was worth in comparatively to everybody. That's what I care about. That's what we say focused on. I don't care about it's kind of like, and it's nothing wrong with necessarily, like, the thing says, like, what does it say about what does this article say about the Chinese? It just shows the Chinese who began robbing the work who were deemed too weak for a dangerous, strenuous job building of the railroad east of Cal. See what I say. See what I'm saying is this. You had a group of people in terms of chattel slaves, African chattel slaves at that time, who were kind of being bred for it, had the strength for it. Different groups in different areas have different strengths, different weaknesses. Slaves had been doing that back-breaking work, died doing that back-breaking work. You had a lot of people. You had a lot of different groups who were not accustomed to it. Same way you had a lot of Native Americans who were not accustomed to it, who did not, how many of them died while trying to do it. The funniest thing is with chattel slaves, in terms of our ancestors, that they could do it for the most part. We're not saying that they didn't die, but they could do a lot of that back-breaking work. So they were opted for. Some did try, but so they were opted for to do it because we could do it. The Chinese didn't survive in the same way that a lot of Native Americans got very sick, right? Some of them were intentionally poisoned. We all know that. But I'm saying, even in the sense of, they weren't, it's very interesting how some groups survived this kind of degradation and what was inflicted upon them and some didn't. And that doesn't make anybody better or worse. You come from all the way over there. It could have been this, like, we were habituated to this environment better than you were, because we've been here, or we were here, and we come through the middle passage. You never know. You have to really look into this, try to figure it out. But what I'm saying is that the railroad that you built in the span does not compare to, like, the railroad that was built by ADOS, because you had your own physical limitations, right? So what happened. The past is the past, and you can't rewrite it. You can't rewrite it to a degree of sameness, to where the Chinese is like the same in terms of contribution as an ADOS, not ADOS, because they weren't, as a chattel slave during that time, in terms of contribution, because there were limitations because of what you were faced with. You just might not have been used to that back-breaking work. Maybe it wasn't your body. The article said weak, but maybe it wasn't your body. Maybe it was just like you had not been habituated to that kind of work. But either way, what happened is what happened, and either way, who built the tracks is who built the tracks for the most part, and that's us. So it is what it is. There's no changing it. So anyway, fam, that is the show for today. Please do not forget, we have another show in between time and meantime, but please do not forget, for Thursday 24th, please finish that book up if you have not already. Also, please hit that like button for me. Please hit the share. Hit the bell if you have not subscribed. If you have not subscribed, you can go to patreon.com/Carnell if you want to become a patron. You can go to donatebrown.com if you want to do that. And the newsletter is in the description. So whatever you want to do, but you can go subscribe to Brown. Subscribe tobrown.com and give me your email address if you have not. Totally free. Hitting that like button is totally free. Please hit that for me. I would appreciate it. And until next time, fam. All right.